software development tutorial. In this channel, we'll be talking about how to create a fully functional apps, meaning that in the upcoming tutorials, I'll be showing you how to take several different components and combining them into one fully fledged small app. I think it's actually the best way for you guys to learn about even one of the things that I'm going to show you in each tutorial instead of other YouTubers' way of just showing that particular way. Because I'm going to show you, first of all, a real implementation of that component and how it can be integrated with other components to create something really special. So today we'll be talking about how to create recycler animation, and by that what I mean is that we'll have two uh, features to our recycler view. Obviously, first of all, we're going to create a recycler view. We're going to create an adapter to display the data into the recycler view, and we'll create a separate class that will implement that will extend another class, and by that add two features to our recycler view. One of them is we'll be able to swipe left or right to delete a certain item from the recycler view. And the second is going to be that we'll be able to drag a certain item from a current position to a different position, meaning we'll be able to press the first item of the recycler view and drag it down the third or the last position. So without further ado, let's get started. Now the first thing we'll do is we'll go to the content main, which is the layout of the main activity, and we'll change the view parent from relative layout to frame layout. And that's because the way I like to structure my project is that the initial development methodology is using fragment. First of all, using fragments. So I'm going to give it an idea of fragment container. What that will enable us to do is to attach a fragment to the frame layout. And for those of you who doesn't know what frame layout is a view. It's a view parent that contains only one view, which will be the view that the fragment will return. So now we need to create the fragment. We'll call it main fragment, which extends from fragment. This is going to be the fragment that we'll be displaying. We'll implement one of its lifecycle methods on create view. Now this method returns the view that we want to display with the fragment. So we'll create a new view object. We'll use the inflator param that we receive from this method, inflator.inflate. Now we'll pass the fragment main layout, which is a layout we haven't created yet. We'll create it now. We'll pass the container and false for attached to root. Now false is because the lifecycle, the method on create view will automatically attach it to the roof. So there's no need to pass here true. So let's create the fragment main layout. Now we don't need to create a linear layout or relative layout, and that's because we only need a recycler view. So let's just create a recycler view with a close tag. We'll give it an ID. For example, we want to display a list of names. In this use case, we want to display a list of names. So let's call it recycler names. And let's give it an attribute of scroll bars to vertical. So we'll get a scroll bar on the vertical way, on the left side, I think. So let's instantiate a new recycler view object. We'll call it recycler names. We'll attach it to the view we just created. Now we'll use a method set has fixed size, and we'll set it as true. What this method does is we tell the recycler view that each item will have the same height. is basically just a way to optimize the process of displaying data, because it will save the recycler view the need to measure each item uh, in order to know its height, its size. So here, by doing so, we state that each item will have a fixed size. The second method we'll use is set layout manager, which requires a layout manager object. Because we want a linear layout, we'll pass a new linear layout object. As you can see, it obviously extends the layout manager. We'll pass three parameters: a context or an activity, an integer that represents the orientation of the recycler view. In our use case, it's vertical. And finally, we'll pass false. Now, the third thing we need to do for our first step is passing an adapter. Now, we haven't created an adapter class yet, so let's create one. We'll make it the nested class because I don't see any use case of referring it from other classes. So let's just make it a nested class, and we'll call it recycler name adapter, which extends the Recyclerview adapter, takes a generic value of the view holder. So let's make the view holder also nested. So recycler names adapter dot view holder. That's the name I decided to call the view holder. Makes sense. We'll implement three required methods. Let's create the view holder, which extends the recyclerview dot view holder. Now, as you can see, we get an error here, and that's because we need to pass a constructor that takes a view, and that view is the layout that each item is going to use to display the content, right? So we have here three methods: the onCreateViewHolder, onBindViewHolder, and getItemCount. Now, obviously, getItemCount is the number of items that we'd like to display. OnBindViewHolder is where we populate the view with the data. This is where we bind the view with the content that we would like to display. Now, onCreateViewHolder, as it sounds, is basically where we instantiate a new viewholder. Not instantiating, but we returning a new object of viewholder. So let's return one. New viewholder takes a view layout. So we'll have to use the same way we inflated the layout here. But here we don't have an inflator RAM like we did in create. So we'll use layout inflator, which has a static method called from, which receives context dot inflate. So here we'll pass a layout. Let's call it row name. We'll pass the parent view group and false, similar to how we did in onCreateView. Let's create row name. It's going to be a simple relative layout. It will have a text view. Let's give it an ID of LBL name, and let's style it for a bit. Let's give it a text color of black, a text size of 20 SP, a text style of italic, and let's give the view group a padding of 16 dp. So it will be a little bit more in the center of the screen. Let's just give it a try. And Lee. As you can see, we see the name. Let's add another cool feature. Let's add a view which width is match parent and his height is 1 dp. We'll give it a background color of black. As you can see, it's on top of the name. I wanted under the name just to create a simple divider between the values. So let's change the relative layout to a linear layout with an orientation of vertical. Right? pretty dope. So let's go back to the view holder and let's create a new instance of a text view. As we called it LBL name, let's initialize it in the constructor using the layout we have. Now we can bind the data. So we can address the LBL name from the holder parameter set text. Now we have to give it a certain text. Now obviously a fully functional app, you'll receive your information from a server or from a database. Because here we don't have actual information, I'll just create a bogus list. So how I'm gonna approach it? Let's think. I have an idea. So let's create a string with a bunch of names, right? Let's call it temp names, right? Now let's give it a couple of names. I probably should have done it earlier to save time, but as I mentioned, it's the first tutorial, so it's gonna take me a couple of videos to get a hang of it. Because I'm gonna post each day, I don't know if I said it, I'm gonna post each day a new tutorial, and I'm gonna get the hang of it fairly quickly. So, Jim, Donna, Ellen, Justin. Alright, I think it's enough. Now, because we're gonna want to change our values from the recycler view, we can't use this kind of string array. We need to use a list, right? Names equal to new array. So in the onCreate method, we'll do for string name and temp names dot. As you can see, we got a an advice from Android Studio on how to do it a little bit more efficiently. There isn't any change actually. It's basically the same thing, but right. Now let's create a class variable of the recycler names adapter. Here we'll give just the length of the name array, and we'll pass the name in which indexed, the position indexed. We'll pass the position, and that's it. So now we just have to initialize, the new adapter, and that's it. Let's just give it a try. Oh, I forgot to pass it. Now, what I just did is basically just I'm gonna talk about how to use fragments in later tutorials, but what I just did is I displayed the fragment inside the container which I created, which is the frame layout. I'll talk more in depth about how to use it. As you can see, we have different methods: replace, add, and detach. I'm going to talk about all of them in the upcoming tutorials, but for now, all you need to know is that this is how you display a fragment. So let's see what we got here. We just need to change one thing. The height should be wrap content. Run it again and see what we got. It's taking a little bit while. Alright, so as you can see, we have all the name we created here. So for the second part of this tutorial, we'll be talking about how to display, to add animations. So the first thing we gotta do is create a new class. Let's call it names. Go Recycler name touch helper, which extends the item touch helper class dot callback. We need to implement three methods. The first method requires us to return an int, and that int is the int we get back from the make movement flags method. As you can see, we get an int back. And that method takes two parameters, an int for drag flags and an int for swipe flags. So let's talk about those. First of all, let's create an int drag flags. Now, int drag flags represent the direction we want to enable dragging. In our use cases, as I said earlier, I want it up and I want it down. Obviously, I can add left or even right also. You know what? Let's just keep it like that so you can see we can have it being dragged all in every direction. And for swipe, let's just give it right and left. So let's just pass the flags. Now, onMove and onSwipe method get called when obviously there's been a move or a swipe. Now, in order for us to make changes in the main fragment class, when this method gets activated, we need to pass the information that the event occurred. So the way we're going to do it, first of all, we're going to create an interface and we're going to call it animation listener. Now this interface is going to have two methods. Move, which take two parameters, the int from pause and to pause. Now the from pause and the to pause, the from pause is the first position where the element is coming from, and the to position is where we want to pass the item. The second method is on swiped, which takes two parameters as well. First of all is the direction, and the second is the position. Let's create a variable class of the interface we just created. Let's get an instance of it from the constructor. So let's handle onSwipe first. First of all, we'll check if animation listener is different from null. If it does, we'll implement the onSwipe method and we'll pass the direction, the view holder get adapted position, which will return the item position that is being swiped. Now for onMove, we'll do actually the same thing, only for the onMove method. Now, the initial position will come from the view holder object. The to position will come from the target position and will return true. So now all we need to do is go back to the main fragment. We'll need to implement the animation listener and implement its two required methods that we created. So in here, on swipe, we want to actually remove the item. So names dot remove pause, and we'll notify that an item has been removed. Notify item removed. For the onMove, we'll add an item in the to position while we remove item from the last position. So let me just explain what happened in this line. We want to add the moved object to the to position, right? Add method takes the index and the object itself. Now, we also want to remove the object from the from position because we passed it to the to position. So, remove the object and also returns it, right? So it's actually pretty neat and pretty useful in our case. So let's just tell the adapter, go listen up, something has changed, right? Notify item moved, which takes the from position and the to position, alright? Now the last thing we need to do is to attach it to the recycler view. So create a new object, item touch helper. We don't need to save a pointer in our use case to it, so we'll just make it this way, which receive a callback object. So we'll pass the recycler name touch helper we created, which requires an animation listener. And because our fragment class implements the item touch listener, we can simply pass here this. And we'll attach it to the recycler view. And that's it. Let's run it to make sure everything is working well. Now, this example is very simple, meaning I didn't go really in depth about creating an animationer for a recycler view, but you can get the point from it. So let's just test it out. Let's swipe it. If it goes away, as you can see, it did go away. We can swipe it there. Let's long press it to drag it. As you can see, we can drag it. We can pass it all the way down if we want. Let's put it here. And let's remove Allen. So that's it. Fairly simple app. Pretty neat, huh? Works pretty well. Alright guys, I'm just tinkering with it a little bit. So thank you guys for watching. I'll be posting daily tutorials about Android development, and expect some really cool things. I'm not going to show you how to display text on a screen. I'm going to show you really useful case scenarios where I personally, the reason why I started this channel is because I saw a gap in the YouTube community about development in Android, meaning that I don't see as much as good tutorials about Android as much as there are about JavaScript or HTML or CSS or things like that. So I think it's a really useful channel. It's going to be a really useful channel. I'm going to be posting really cool things that other YouTubers don't really talk about, and I'm going to go a little bit more in depth. And this was my first time creating a video, so it was a little bit slow. Will get better and faster. And yeah, thanks you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.